Alright, SSL Family Dad with Simple Suburban Living, and today I'm going to run you through the process to put a new pair of shocks on a Chevy Traverse or like model vehicle. Okay, so we've got our 2009 Chevy Traverse here, and basically I'm going to take you through the process that I'm using here to change the shocks or put a new pair of shocks in the vehicle. This is a little bit more in-depth process. Definitely not something you can get done in an hour or two, but definitely worth it to do yourself. We've started to notice a lot of chattering and bounciness in the passenger side shock front end of the vehicle, and definitely we can tell that that shock has gone bad. It's also leaking, and the boot that covers it, the dust cover, is loose, and you can see the fluid is leaking out of it. So definitely needs to be replaced. It's always a good idea to replace both shocks at the same time, and so that's what we're doing here. I ordered all the parts that I have here on Amazon.com, and I'll put links to those things for this vehicle in the description. I've actually found them to be probably the least expensive around. Even the local auto parts places and other places online, Amazon seems to have the best price. So that's what I use, and of course you can get your parts anywhere, but I'll show you what I got throughout the video here. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is break all these lug nuts loose before we get the vehicle jacked up off the ground. Alright, once we have the lug nuts broke loose, we're going to go ahead and just get the vehicle jacked off the ground. There's a couple parts of the frame here right in the front, underneath the front and the center, where you can jack the whole front of the vehicle up, and then we're going to get some jack stands underneath. Alright, we can get the tire taken off here. Next, we need to take this whole guard piece off here, and there's just a bunch of these little clips along the inside of the hood here that just pop up with a screwdriver and then pull out. And at the end here, there's also this little rubber one. This one actually broke off, but there's a little clip in here as well that needs to come out. I also need to take off this grounding post here, grounding terminal from the battery. It just unscrews. Okay, next we have to get the windshield wipers off. So we're going to just pop the cap off at the end of each of them, and there's a 15mm nut in here that we need to take off. Next, we're just going to take off this whole front panel here. It's still kind of pinched in underneath a few other places here, so you kind of have to pull up on it hard, but it should come out fairly gracefully. I also had to take a few clips out of this front panel here as well in order to pull this around that grounding plug that was in there. But after that comes out, the whole thing should slide out pretty easily. Alright, so now we can get in here on the top of the shock and take these three 15mm nuts off. One of them you want to just leave on a little bit, just so the shock doesn't fall all the way through once you get it loosened up down at the bottom. But you can take the other two all the way off. Okay, next we're going to get an 18mm wrench on this bolt at the top here. And we're also going to need, in a minute here, an 8mm wrench as well, and socket. And it's a good idea to get these clips out of the way also. Okay, so once you break it loose, this one's really rusty, so if it's not as rusty, it'll be a lot easier. But basically this nut here comes off of this bolt, but we have to stop this bolt from spinning from the front. And so you've got an 8mm socket here that you put on the end of it. And then basically you're just holding this one here to stop it from spinning while you get the nut off. And it can be pretty locked in there, so what I found was I've got a pipe rigged up here to hold the middle part for me while I get some good pressure on this. And just little by little, we're getting it off here. Okay, so we've got this bolt here on the stabilizer link we were trying to take off, and it's rusted on there so bad that it ended up stripping out. The 8mm end of this thing is just completely rounded. Can't grip it with anything anymore to get this off, so we're going to have to cut this bolt off and get a whole new piece here for that stabilizer arm, a whole new bolt. I'm not sure if I have to get a whole new stabilizer arm or not. I'm going to have to run up to the auto parts store and find out. But that's just some of the things that we run into when we do these things ourselves sometimes. But we'll get that cut off and see what we end up with. Okay, so next we're going to get the main two bolts out here. And you want to get some wood stacked up or have a jack underneath the hub assembly here so that it doesn't fall down. You want to keep that supported, obviously, so it's not relying on the brake lines or anything like that hanging from it. I just stacked some wood under here. You can also use a jack. Now these bolts are going to be a little bit tough. I always have one of these pipes. It's just a 3/4 inch piece of black pipe on my socket wrench here, and I use that to break these free. Once you get them off to the end, just unscrew the nut a little bit past the stud there, so we're not, or past the end of the bolt there, so we're not damaging it. So you need to give it a few good whacks with a hammer. And once you have those broken loose, you can take the nuts all the way off. And then while you're supporting this, keeping a little weight off of it, they'll just tap right out. Alright, so just using one hand to kind of hold the shock here, I'm just taking that last nut off on the top with my other arm here. And this will let the whole shock assembly free. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the new shock that I purchased, and this is the old shock assembly that I just took out of the passenger side of the vehicle. So you'll notice obviously that this coil is not with the new one. Now I got these for I think like $60 a piece versus the whole assembly, from what I found aftermarket, they started, you know, about $200 and up. So in an effort to save a little bit of cost, I'm reusing my coil here. And so what you have to do is take the coil off of the old shock, and in order to do that you need a coil compression tool. I bought this one on Amazon in the middle of this project and had it shipped, and it was here actually the next day. I think it was $34, I believe. And so I'll put a link in the description to this. This is a really nice little tool. It's very handy to have, I think, for future projects, for you know, when I have to do this another time, and very inexpensive. So, you know, versus $34 for one of these versus, you know, an extra $150 or more to get a, you know, the whole assembly already put together. So you'll know you're ready. You can tell when the tension's off the spring. You can kind of spin the shock around freely here, and so you can tell that the tension's off the top and the bottom. And so the next part here we're going to do is a little bit tricky. An impact wrench would be extremely useful to have here. Of course I don't have one, and so we're going to be doing it manually. Okay, so just looking at the top of the shock here, there's a nut here at the top that needs to be spun off. That is connected to the shaft of the shock. And if you just start cranking that thing around, you're just going to spin the whole shaft of the shock. So you also have to hold this nut here at the top, which holds the center shaft in place while you loosen this one up. I'll kind of show you what I've done to get this apart. There definitely are better ways to do this with different tools, but I'm just using what I have here. So the first thing I did was just use a pair of vice grips to hold on to the top plate here and break this loose. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is just use a pair of vice grips to grab that center shaft of the shock and get a good grip on that as best I can. A pipe wrench would also work here, which I may have to use on this one if I can't get this to work. And once that nut comes off, this whole piece can stay on here. Oh, that all stays together. Shock comes right out after we get the vice grips off. And so that's it for the shock. You're also going to want to save this rubber piece here. Okay, so when it comes to the the actual boot that goes on the shock, I purchased some new ones from AutoZone. You can get these on Amazon as well, and I'll put a link in the description to these. But you know, I like the design of the factory ones a little bit better, but these are kind of stretched out and worn out, and it actually looks like they're kind of compressed and the rubber's starting to break down. So I'm gonna, even though I like these ones a little bit better, I think I'm gonna go with the ones that I bought. So okay, next we're gonna get our coil put back on here. And again, you just want to make sure that there's a stop position for the bottom of the coil. You want that to be in the same place. Obviously, that needs to be in a certain place. Same thing with the top here. You know, it's just nice to keep it in the same groove that you have on the in that rubber kind of washer that goes around the top there. So just line that back up with the top of the spring. Okay, so I'll show you how I'm getting this tightened down here. Now, you auto mechanics are going to laugh at me, but I have limited tools here, so this is what we're doing. So I've got just a regular socket here, and then this is an 11/32, but I know there's a metric size that probably fits this better. So I've got a deep socket that goes on that middle shaft, and then I've just got a regular 1/2" drive socket that fits over the large nut there. And so I'm just using this to hold that in place. And a pair of channel locks to get that nut tightened up. Now luckily this is a nice lock nut and it's pretty easy to go on. All the weight of the shock will be pushing up on this, so it's going to keep this all in place no matter how tight you get it. Of course you want to get it tight, but again, this is one of those things, there's definitely better ways to do this. But part of the reason I share these videos is because I'm not an auto mechanic. And you know, anybody can do this stuff. You don't necessarily have to have a specialty set of tools and a lot of expensive things. You can get by with doing these kinds of projects with just minimal stuff. So that's the idea here. Okay, once we've got that top nut tightened on here, we're ready to take off our coil compressors, and this just basically loosen them up a little bit on each side in intervals and until they come off easily. Okay, so remember that stabilizer link here that we had cut off earlier because the bolt broke. I got a new one of those as well, so that will match up here nicely. I think this was 15 bucks? Might have been less than that on Amazon. I'm actually surprised at how many parts you can get on Amazon. So again, put a link to this in the description in case somebody else has the same issue I had here. But I'm actually going to cut the bottom one off here as well, and then we'll get the new one installed. Okay, so we've got that stabilizer linkage back on there, and we're ready to get our new shock put in. So what I like to do is just kind of feed it up into the holes, mounting holes at the top, and then just get one of our bolts put back into the mount here at the bottom. That just kind of holds everything together, and then I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so once we've got that shock pushed up, we can start getting those nuts put back on at the top here. You want to get these tightened down pretty good because that's going to hold that shock up in place for you. So the top bolt here is fixed, but this bottom one is actually adjustable, and you can see this moves. And I guess that has to do with the alignment too. So one thing that you may have to get done after you get the new shocks put in is you may have to take it to a place to get an alignment done. To try to avoid that, if you can see where the wear marks are from the old shock. And so if we just keep it kind of lined up in that same spot, we should be pretty close for our alignment. Okay, and the new one's just a little bit different. It actually has a 15mm spot for a wrench on the back of it to hold the shaft still, and then you just go ahead and put the it's a 19mm lock nut on the front. And as you get these clips put back in here, should go right back in where they came out. Alright, all that's left to do now is to put everything back together up on top here. And you put our terminal back on here, and then get our windshield wiper blades back on. And get our tires back on. Alright, so that pretty much wraps it up. I got the vehicle all put together. I'm just going to take it for a test drive, make sure everything sounds right. Like I said, one of the things, if you notice alignment issues, that's something that you'll probably have to take it up to a shop to do. That's very cheap, and they can usually do it while you wait. So not something that's real major. Saved a whole lot of money on this repair. I'm going to put some of the specifics in the description of the video. Again, links to all the tools and things that I used will be there as well, if you want to check those things out. And I also want to reference, there's a video from A1 Auto Parts, probably the top hit in YouTube and in Google if you search for how to do this repair. They have a great video. In fact, I reference that a lot to get the specifics on the tools and things like that I needed to get started. So please check that video out as well. My video is more of a average Joe take on the these types of repairs, because when you have a professional mechanic or when you have a full auto shop, things tend to go a lot differently than they do when average Joe takes care of the same repair. Run into different issues and things like that. So that's why I always like to document these types of repairs. But hopefully you guys found this informational, useful. If you're doing this repair, it's definitely worthwhile. We saved a whole lot of money doing it this way, and it's just a satisfying thing to be able to know how to repair your vehicle. You learn a lot when you get in there and start taking things apart, and so when something else goes wrong down the road, you can identify it very easily and get in there and make those repairs. So definitely something I recommend that everybody does. It does take a little bit of time, but it's well worth it. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. Have a good one.